Good afternoon, everyone. Like a tornado ripping through our society, our civilization, our worlds are being torn apart. Schumann resonance highest ever recorded. Germany's 60-year high inflation. Electric shock. Forex increase. Electric prices. Financing now available for American gasoline at $8 a gallon. Chicken woes. Singapore and Malaysia. Tennessee repealing gold and silver sales tax. Keeping us with the sound money against global inflation. No country will be blue at the end of this year. Fall of the purchasing power US dollar mimics silver content of the Roman denarius. Sound money gold certificates, a blast from the past. World Economic Forum being anti-bug is bigotry. But I'm going to draw the line at drinking beer made from urine. So it seems like we're going to need to hide and disguise what we have as the great onslaught continues. Check this out. Many people today struggle to manage their weight, but this is more true than ever after the age of 20, because after the age of 20, our body's metabolism slows down by as much as 4% every decade. By the time we're 50, we've experienced a 10% drop or more in our metabolism. That's a risk to health. That's why I highly recommend adaptwithketo.com. This product works by increasing the ketone levels inside your body, which in turn support boosted metabolism. A scoop a day, I saw improvements for my energy levels while working on the farm. And the best part is I never had to cut out carbs or make other changes to my diet. And if you want to try some of this amazing keto powder, luckily I've secured a deal for the Adapt 2030 audience. Take 51% off your next order by going to adaptwithketo.com or click on the link in the description box below. And now on with the video. And this image perfectly describes where we sit in our civilization, our societies, our purchasing power, our way of life. We are being tossed into the Wizard of Oz, ferocious tornado, picture perfect. Don't let the beauty disguise the illusion of danger. Speaking of that, Schumann resonance spikes to the highest ever recorded. It's back on the 24th. I thought, really, how high is that? Let's move to a different set of measurement. Extreme. So perhaps this is why everybody is talking about, I feel something different. Something is changing. Well, yeah, if the sun's going to step down or start to behave differently, so is our Earth going to respond in the magnetic field. The heartbeat of the Earth will literally change. We're watching this happen in real time. Now it's affecting the jet streams. Our crops are becoming, well, not so easy to identify the plant and harvest seasons with extremes in either. This is why we're seeing a lot of crop yield declines being masked by other political, geopolitical events. Now we need to jump back into agri-politics, which is one and the same with energy. No diesel fuel, no agriculture. And when it does come to the table or the supermarket, Germany's 60-year high with inflation. This comes from Allianz. Inflation and enormous economic risk. Yeah, and a recipe for social disorder. Now, electric shock. This comes from power contract power providers, not you at the end of your electric socket plugging your computer or TV in. This is from the wholesalers. Forex increase, so I'm wondering what German power will do along with the 60-year high in inflation. What happens when the Russian gas and oil gets cut off? Watch Germany break away from the rest of the EU out of self-survival. And speaking of things that go ouch in the middle of the night, $8 gasoline now in California, soon to be 10. I guess those stories of pumps being reprogrammed for 4 digits do have merit. Financing available soon. So imagine if it cost you $200 to fill your tank. What would you do? If you have to do that multiple times per month, you're spending $1,000 on gasoline. Your food price is going to double, maybe triple. Almost every other genre of services and goods is also going up in price due to limited availability or complaints of supply chains not there. Now people are getting pulled over the coals by, oh, the supply chains are broken. Sorry, that shovel's triple price. But I need it to grow food. Well, so do the other 10,000 people in line behind you, which will pay double that price to get it. And eventually we're going to come into the thing where you're going to pay any price to get it. And then what do you stop spending money on is the key thing. And that's what's really talked about in a lot of these economic scenarios. So what are you going to stop spending on when all of your money, as in history, we've seen it again and again, goes for food, fuel, and heating your home just to stay alive. I mean the basics of the basics, and that gobbles up all of your income. Well, people get angry. But we have to mesh this with global inflation outlook. Now, the projected annual inflation by country in 2022 are from official numbers from the International Monetary Fund, not from shadow stats, which would be double what you're seeing on the screen here. So there's two sets of numbers out there. One's official from the government. The other one's actually tracks real inflation that includes everything that we consume on a daily basis as an individual or a nation. The blue is quickly going to vanish. I don't anticipate seeing any blue on this chart here at the end of the year. And using shadow stats, there would be no blue at this time. So you can see where you live in the world and where it might run away. That's why having a stack like this, Wall Street silver, posting some images of the stacks. We're going to have to return to sound money in order to reset the economy after this hyperinflation event runs. Please remember your property taxes, a little bit of gold, a little silver, not investment advice, but you'd be able to cash that in, get fiat of the day, and then pay your property tax so you don't lose your home. I'm only taking you back to 1928. So hopefully this blast from the past of our currency used to be backed by gold will show you the future. Speaking of precious metals, Tennessee governor signs full repeal of sales taxes on gold and silver. Woohoo! They were charging 10% before. If you're going to buy bullion online, you had to pay 10% in addition. So if you ordered $1,000, you had to pay $100 in tax. That's 5 extra ounces of silver you gave away. Thank you, Bill Lee, for doing that. Because if we look at purchasing power that can be protected by precious metals, the purchasing power declined all the way to 2019. And this hasn't run to 2022, which will probably be negative by now. But something interesting in history, it follows the debasement of silver in Roman currency. The denarius, the coinage of the day, is following the same profile. And an outlier here, the Queen taking a look at their private gold holdings, because the bars are not numbered, none of the racks are numbered, nothing seems to be segregated or allocated. So this is gold holdings of the royal family. And if it does come to confiscation again, you're going to have to think of ingenious ways to disguise your stash. This one comes from the Prohibition days. So I think we're going to have to drop back in history and learn a lot from what happened prior to get us through these new times. Because after talking with Lynette Zhang at ITM Trading, I'd ask her in a conversation about what if you were to just keep your gold even if they confiscated it? And she was very clean. Well, you can't exit out. Where are you going to exit your funds to? But she was buying more antiquated gold, which is collector category gold, which could be bought and sold legally, versus bullion gold, which would be confiscated. You could hold it. Now, if you held it from when the confiscation was the 1930s, you would have had to wait it all the way until the 1980s, 1990s to exit that. Same with South Africa, the Krugerrands, people would take those out of the country. But if you were caught with that, it was a huge sentence. Same here. You were caught selling gold in the 1950s, 1960s, you're going to have some explaining to do. So whatever you hide or what you stash or cash, if you're going to want to come back out of that in a real term basis on when a currency's reset, they revalue everything, or even during the hyperinflation event that you want to take that gold or silver and turn it into the fake fiat that's hyperinflating away. After the confiscation orders have been given, it's going to be real difficult to do that. So, plan carefully on your exit strategy out of metals into fiat to pay off things like your house. To be able to take some of that and then pay off your property taxes. This is the biggest thing. I encourage you to go look at all these videos from describing the 1930s. Neil McCoy Ward, who I just had an interview with, had a 1930s Great Depression diary series that references the same exact thing. I've been watching this video, Life in the 1930s during the Great Depression, referencing the exact same thing. People had their houses fully paid for, but they couldn't pay the property tax and they were removed off their land and their farms for what we consider now a few dollars. So that's going to be the big thing. Like hyperinflation is one thing, but setting your property tax to be able to pay, that's quite another. And if you got illegal metals because they put out a confiscation order, oops, now you're caught between a rock and a hard place. So figure it out before this happens. And from Cicero, if you have a garden and a library, you have everything you need. Totally agree. Now imagine if all those books behind were books about gardening, homesteading, self-sufficiency, preparedness. Like myself right now, I'm reading Greenhouse Gardening, a beginner's guide to growing fruit and vegetables all year round, because that's where we're going to need to go. Now, this garden's great during the summer months, spring, and into fall, but what happens when you come into the winter months? Food shortages in earnest are going to hit smack dab in the middle of winter this year, especially into the harvest season. The panic will take hold, but by that time, the gardens are dwindling from the production output. So you're going to have a choice. You're going to have to bring a lot of stuff indoor or protect it and create a greenhouse so you can grow it. But you're going to need knowledge to do that. So I see that loop. Cicero had identified knowledge is your food and food is your knowledge. A skill set you can take on the road in case something happens. Let's talk about chicken. Now we see egg shortages happening everywhere. There's been a bunch of egg processing plants in the last week that have, again, mysteriously ceased operations due to damage. And this off of Bloomberg, Malaysia to halt chicken exports from June 1st. They're having a chicken shortage. And then Singapore, which was so reliant on imports, I don't care how much money they have, if people are not exporting the food for them to buy, the case that you see is the end result. I don't care if you have $1 million. You still only get that much chicken. Once you buy the rest of it, there's still zero, which just adds on to the already ongoing chicken shortage in Singapore. So what are they going to do after June 1st? And see, that's a question not a lot of people are asking. It's okay, these bans are coming in, this resource nationalism, these export bans of foods. What happens next? Where does Singapore go next to get mass amounts of chicken? They're already competing with China. Most other nations around the area, including Thailand, are mulling export bans on rice already, so they're not going to just freely send the rest of their eggs and chicken to periphery nations. There's already a lot of animosity between the so-called Southeast Asian trading bloc. It's good when things are good, but when things are not good and there's shortages, countries are going to hold it in. Perfect example, Indonesia, they cut all palm oil exports. Somehow that affected a nation that had wheat to be able to trade them. And there was some sort of deal done. We'll give you the wheat, you pull back on the full 100 export ban, and you keep 80% for yourselves in country. I didn't know this. Indonesia has a domestic palm oil supply, 2 million tons for very uncertain times where they can still have that distributed to the public so they could cook so they don't riot on the streets. That's only allowing 20% of all the normal exports from Indonesia to go out to the planet. Then what? So where do you go to this next, I should say step, down or step, sideways, whatever it would be? You need something to cook with, you need something to eat. Primary source A disappears, then where's primary source B come from? Sometimes it's not. So now you're down to C, D, E, and F choice. Like for America, it would be almost going from wheat bread to buckwheat bread or spelt breads. Okay, buckwheat and spelt, there's not such a large supply of that, but it could be a substitute. Not a lot of people are familiar with making buckwheat bread or even grinding buckwheat. Where do you find buckwheat? Well, I grow some because we have bees and I do it for the pollinators. But unless you're in the farming community, it's going to be fine difficult to find a second and third choice. And what are supermarkets going to offer as well? It's another thing. So some of these primary ingredients for producers to put something in a box, like corn syrup, corn starches, corn emulsifiers, corn thickening agents, just fillers, whatever it would be, there's going to be a breakdown in that as well. Okay, something on your shelf will dry up. But what is going to be the substitute, and would the substitute be available, and would it fit your need? So we're going to have a lot of retooling of our tastes moving forward. Availability is going to probably come back down more seasonal. And what we had experienced of this incredible bounty where you walk in, there's 35 choices of something, it's probably going to pull itself back down like it did in our grandparents' age when there was 3, maybe 5 choices. But can you adjust to that without losing your mind? Because I don't care if you're looking at Ukraine or Russia, but now Australia is saying that soaring fertilizer costs are impeding Australia's bid to boost its exports. Clogged ports. We are seeing clogged ports across the planet. So if you're able to, you might want to buy some spices while they're available and get some of these larger. Now, I know the problem with nutmeg is you have the nut, and once it's powderized, it loses a lot of its flavor profile and nutritional profile. So if you're able to keep something that's not been processed so much, like the black pepper's already been cracked. Myself, I would look for the whole black pepper, the whole white pepper, corns, of course, and then you can put them in your own hand grinder and do that on demand there. The chilies, those are in a great form already. You can stack those and hold that for quite some time. And the star anise, it's not powderized. So what you want to look for is more of these non-processed into its final powder form if you're going to look for spices. But when you get into the turmerics and the gingers, this sort of thing, there's a shorter shelf life on that. So you're just going to have to pick and choose what you think might be storable for a longer period of time. Now, the World Economic Forum here off of Twitter, being anti-bug is bigotry. Billions of people across the world eat insects as a part of their daily diet. I would like to see a breakdown on those countries. And they're asking the question, what if you don't want to transition to a bug-based diet? Because it's pushing hard on cricket powder. And I talked to somebody who ate a loaf of cricket bread and they couldn't do it. The texture was so different that it was extremely noticeable to the point it was unpalatable. Off the Independent, could beer made from urine help water shortages? There have to be 1,000 other solutions before we need to start going into our sewage treatment plants and pulling that out to create beer. That's kind of the yuck and the gross and the no way. No way. Again, why is it always being limited, pushing us back into the same systems, the same companies, the same styles of business and recycling that has brought us to this point of society collapse right now? But they want to keep pushing the same systems that brought us to society collapse. Can we not think of any new ways to generate power, like using the Earth's magnetic field? Can we not find any new water sources? How about under the ground? I encourage you to look up primary water and how much water exists in the aquifers of this planet, especially under North Africa and Kazakhstan and East Asia. There's an enormous amount of water. Desalinization technologies coupled with magnetic motors and these types of power devices from earlier patents in the Tesla era, circa 1880, 1900, and moving over to sodium-ion batteries, basically salt batteries, which were the original batteries from the electric car. If they're pushing you to eat insects and drink, I think we've just seriously jumped the shark. And at this point, you realize you're going to have to grow your own food. You're going to have to store some foods too. We're at this point now with those 2 articles, and they're serious. You're going to have to get way more self-sufficient, because what the system right now is going to offer you after it does collapse into the breakdown phase is what you just saw. And for me, that's unacceptable, and I'll do anything else I have to so I don't get that choice. That they're A, B choice, I'm like, no, I got C, D, E, and F because I'm producing my own food. I have my own wells. I'm trading with my neighbors, so no thanks. I don't need your system. That's where we need to go with this. And speaking of storable foods, My Patriot Supply and Adapt 2030, the 3-month emergency food supply, 25-year shelf life. It's all about staying out of the chaos long enough for everything to subside so then you can go back into supermarkets or into the cities. You could ride out a couple weeks easily of chaos by having storable foods, and when things do settle down, which they will, they always do, it's a pattern, you can head back out in situations that are much safer to deal with. This is the reason that you would want to have storable foods. That link's in the description box below, along with all of tonight's stories, images, graphs, links to all of that in the same description box below. I do thank you for watching. Hope you got something out of the video, and I will see you next time.